I'm going to do the thing where you record into your phone to try and improve my audio a little bit for this video. In this video, I am going to show you how to do TetraPak printing. TetraPak printing is using these containers, they're TetraPak milk cartons, cutting them open and dry point etching onto the surface and then printing them. I'm also going to use a pasta maker instead of a press for this project. So what is so great about TetraPak printing is that the materials that we're using are super accessible and anyone can do this. You just need something sharp and pointy to scratch into the surface of the TetraPak. A pasta maker can be found secondhand for very cheap. I found this one on Facebook Marketplace for $10. And the only real investment that you need to make to do this form of printmaking is to buy some etching ink. So I will be using an oil-based artist grade etching ink for this. I have a design ready to go for this project. This is my sketchbook. I made it myself. The project that I'm doing, it is here. I'm going to alter it just a little bit when I print it, but that's basically the concept. I have already traced my drawing onto this piece of baking paper, which is what I use instead of tracing paper. It's just a budget hack to achieve basically the same thing. I need to cut open my TetraPak milk bottle. It might need a little bit of a clean still. I've given it a rinse, but sometimes there's still just a little bit of residue in there. And then I can start marking this out onto the block. What you'll see me doing now is that I'm going to cut the top and the bottom of this TetraPak, and then I'm going to cut up the back seam where there's a seam in the milk bottle, because that is the less usable part. The most usable part is the front big section, and you can also use the sides pretty easily. Depending on the size of the project you want to make. I choose to avoid the seams in the TetraPak. Not everyone does. You can go over the seams. There's no reason you can't flatten it out and have a big surface. But since I'm using the pasta maker as my press, it probably is best that I keep it to that smaller size because that's what's going to fit through the press. I then am going to use my baking paper and I'm going to turn it over so the drawing side is down onto the surface that I'm going to be cutting. Then I will trace over the surface using a ballpoint pen. This will both transfer some of the graphite lead pencil onto the surface of the TetraPak, but it will also gently indent the surface, which is okay. As long as you're indenting and not scratching, it shouldn't come through onto your final print. Okay, we've traced the image, which means we're up to the bit where we scratch the TetraPak surface. The tools that I like to use include this awl, which is a pointy bookbinding tool. It's what you use to punch the holes where you're string binding into the spine. This is just a standard etching tool. It's kind of like the cheapest etching tool that you can buy. I got it for $5 from an art shop. This is a scribe, which is a tool that builders or carpenters use to mark wood precisely for measurement. So again, it's just a thing with a pointy tip. What you're looking for with tools to do TetraPak etching is really anything that's sharp and pointy. You might use a needle that you could mount into a handle. You could use the pointy tip of a compass. Anything that's sharp and pointy is worth a go and worth trying out. You'll notice as you try out things that different tools have different marks. Like most printmaking techniques, it's important that you reverse the image when you transfer it onto the plate. This is especially true if you're using text in your image because otherwise it is going to show up reversed. But also, if you've designed an image, it's likely that you would like it to be in the orientation that you've designed it. So when you reverse it and put it onto the plate, when you print it, it will come out the way that you've designed the image. Okay, so now it's time for the fun bit. With TetraPak, one of the things that you can do is you can tear away the top surface of the TetraPak down to the sort of cardboard middle. And when you print this, it creates like a rich kind of textured velvety black. To tear away any background bits, what you want to do is you want to lift the corner with a sharp tool. And then either using your fingers or a pair of tweezers, you can lift away sections. You just need to make sure that any edges between what you want to be black and what you want to remain light colored are well defined with a sharp tool, and you kind of maybe want to go across those a little bit as you're tearing away. But this is definitely one of the more fun bits of making a TetraPak print. I've made a little bit of an error where I've lifted away one of the ears of the rabbit that's been pulled out of the hat. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use a little bit of PVA glue, and I'm just going to glue that down and leave that to dry while I'm working on the other plate. Okay, so we're ready to print our print. I like to use an oil-based etching ink, and I find that this etching ink is quite thick, and because the TetraPak plates are a little bit delicate, I choose to add a few drops of linseed oil into it and mix those in. You will also need something to scrape the ink across the surface of the plate. I use this palette knife, a plastic palette knife. You will need cloths. These are just cotton cloths that have been salvaged from an old pillowcase that wore out. I like to use gloves. I like to use the loose gloves because I find them easier to take on and off as I'm printing. Currently my paper is soaking in water just to soften it up. This is essential. You do need to soak your paper. When I'm using my handmade paper, I just spray it with a little bit of water, and that's enough to get the print running through smoothly. What we're going to do is we're just going to start off by scraping ink along the surface of the plate. Using a circular motion, we rub the ink into the cracks, and then we kind of burnish it off the lighter areas. And there's a little bit of artistic play in this, in the amount of ink you choose to leave or take off. It is very easy to leave too much, and it is very easy to take too much away and not have your lines appearing when you print. Because there's a little bit of play involved in this process, if you have any questions or you try it out and you need to do a bit of troubleshooting, just leave me a question down below and I will do my best to help you out. It's important to try and make sure, even with any larger black areas, that you try and take some of the ink off those areas as well, or else where you wipe around the lighter areas, there'll be like a kind of light shadow. And this can happen a little bit anyway, and I don't think it's a terrible effect, but it's just something to be aware of. Then I'm going to lay down some toilet paper across my registration board. The toilet paper keeps that space clean because the back of the TetraPak will get a little bit inky. And it also sticks to the surface of the paper, and it makes running it through the press a little bit easier since we're dealing with a vertical press. When I run it through the press, on my pasta maker, the right setting with the paper, the TetraPak, the backing plate, and the felt is number 3, but that might vary from press to press a little bit, so you need to play with it to make sure you're getting the right thing. All of my Patreons who are signed up in the month of May will receive one of these prints in the post. I'm also planning to send out the plates randomly to one of my Patreons as a special surprise. So if you would like to receive one of these prints, do just make sure that you're signed up to my Patreon Pen Pals reward tier before the end of May, and I will send one out to you. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I really hope that you've enjoyed watching it. If you have, do make sure to subscribe so that you can catch more of my content. I put out new printmaking, bookbinding, and general art studio content every week. I appreciate your company for this project, and I will see you in the next video.